Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wildwood Sunny Farms YouTube channel. My name is Grayson, and today I'm going to be answering questions from my YouTube comment section. A lot of folks ask questions, and these questions were mostly from last night. I put out a post asking for some questions where I can answer them, and a couple of these questions were from about a year ago. I just wanted to pop them back up and kind of answer them again since the last time I answered them was probably a year ago. So if you are a viewer and you see this comment pop up of yours and you don't remember it, just know that you probably did comment it, but it was probably a year ago. So I just want to reuse some of these questions, and the questions from a while back are really good ones, so I wanted to include them in this video. So, further ado, let's go on and get into the video. Alright, so the first question is from Derek, and he asks, "Hi there, thank you for the video. I have a drone laying queen to it, and I was wondering if you know what causes this. I haven't replaced her yet, but I'm thinking of combining using the newspaper method with a stronger hive, and I pinched the drone laying queen and trying to split it back again later this summer with an order queen. Any advice of this? Thanks in advance." Alright, so I did answer this question already, but this question was from about a year ago, and I wanted to go on and answer it again because I think a lot of folks have problems with drone laying queens, and I made a video talking about it because I found myself upon one of these situations before, having a drone laying queen. So the first part of this question, and pretty much the main part of the question, was what causes a drone laying queen? Well, what causes a drone laying queen is mainly whenever the queen runs out of sperm. So what happens is, let's kind of go back a little bit. Whenever you have a queen and she goes out and mate with other drones, she storms that sperm in her spermatheca. So she needs sperm to fertilize a egg. Fertilizing an egg creates a worker bee. If she doesn't fertilize the egg, that turns into a drone. So when she runs out of sperm, she can't fertilize the egg. So therefore it turns into a drone, but she wanted to fertilize it and make it a worker, but she couldn't fertilize it to make a worker because she doesn't have any sperm. That's one of the main reasons why you come up with this problem. That really means that she's too old, and what you need to do is pinch her, kill her, whatever you need to do, as fast as you can. Order yourself another queen. None of the eggs, anything in that colony that you have, the bees will be able to make into a queen because those eggs are not fertilized. You need to fertilize eggs, fertilize maybe young larvae, very young larvae, to be able to raise a queen with just the bees. So, but the better way is just to go on and order a queen. But if you really want to not have to order a queen, you have to go to another colony and get some frames of eggs and larvae, stick those in that colony, and they can raise another queen after you pinch her. I think the more efficient way would just be ordering a queen. It'd be a little bit more faster, and it would save the hassle. The next question is from Salava790, and they ask, "Are emergency and supersedure cells each formed in the middle of the frame?" This question came from another video that I made. You can go back and watch the video, and I'll kind of talk about the placement, and I will mention here and talk a little bit about it here as well. Main thing is, really, it's hard to really say exactly where these cells will be placed. It's really hard to say exactly where, but usually emergency cells can be found anywhere on the comb, most likely in the middle of the frame, maybe closer to the middle to bottom, somewhere around there. Mostly in the middle, you'll find your emergency cells. Emergency cells are exactly when the queen dies. Exactly when the queen dies, they're immediately start making up an emergency cell, because that queen, she's gone immediately. They don't sense her pheromones, so therefore they go on and make a new queen because it's emergency. Supersedure cells are usually found on the face of the comb, often near the middle as well, but not exclusively are they always in the middle. It can depend, it can vary, because a lot of times they really don't care exactly where the cell will be placed. It doesn't really make much of an effect on them, but there is one big thing you can definitely tell if you're trying to see if you have a swarm cell or a emergency super seizure cell. So swarm cells, I mentioned in the video, you guys can go back and watch it. I explain it in more detail. But the swarm cells are most likely will be on the bottom. That's why, as us beekeepers do, to be able to see if we have swarm cells, we just open up the box, look underneath. If there's no cells, then we close it back up and we call it a day if we're only out there to make sure they're not going out in swarm. That's why you see that, because mostly swarm cells are on the bottom. But to answer your question, usually super seizure cells, emergency cells will be found in the middle. Sometimes emergency cells will usually vary from the top to middle, and then you'll have your super seizure cells, which can vary from the middle, maybe top to maybe closer to the bottom. So depends, but swarm cells are always going to be on the bottom. Most times they'll always be on the tippy bottom, on the very bottom, because whenever you open your hive up, like I said, you most likely see them sticking out of the bottom of your brood box. You'll most likely see those cells popping out under the brood box. Okay, the next question is from Tim Sanders, and he asks, what are your thoughts on snail grove covers? If you don't know what a snail grove cover is, it's basically two meshes, two screens, and there's a space in between, and the bees can't touch each other, they can't send pheromones between each other. So what are my thoughts on it? And I'm going to be very honest, I have not tried one, I have not used one, but I have researched them, and I do know what you use them for. So, what do you use them? What are some of the common ways that you can use snail grove covers? Well, number one is to place weaker colonies on top of stronger ones. So what you can do is you can have one of your regular strong colonies, just a regular strong one, and then you put that snail grove cover on top, then you put your weaker colony on top, and then maybe the heat from the stronger one can help the weaker ones on the top. You can stack them a couple stories as well. So that's one main way beekeepers use snail grove covers. Another one is to make splits, swarm control, requeening, you name it. Those are some different ways you can use them. And I'm not going to mention all of the things. I'm not going to mention how you do them all, because I actually plan to do a video in the near future whenever I can get my own snail grove cover and try it out myself. And then I'll do a video kind of talking about it and my own experiences once I get one, because I plan to invest in one maybe next year to see how it works out and maybe record a video with it. Alright, the next question is from Galloway Lights, and he asks, how small will a 6 brood frame colony of bees get after a winter? Well, that's a really good question, but that really does depend on what the beekeeper does. Does the beekeeper treat? Does the beekeeper feed? If you do all the things that you need to do, feed your bees, keep them healthy, treat as you need. If you have high mite counts, if you treat, your bees will most likely not get too small. They'll stay at a pretty decent size, depending on what you want. If you want them to get bigger, you can feed them heavier, and they'll kind of grow through winter. If you're down south, if you're up north, you'll have a big cluster through winter, because that's what you want. Down here, I have about 5 frames, 4 frames, 3 to 6 frames of brood a colony. And as long as you keep them really healthy, they'll stay pretty decent size. They won't get too small, after winter going into spring. Now, where it can have some problems and where you may wonder how small can they get, well, they can get very small, especially if you have bad mites. I've done videos talking about it, and I'll talk about it today, and I'll probably talk about it throughout the next couple of months when we don't have anything else to talk about until we get to spring. Whenever you have a lot of mites in your hives, those mite numbers continue to go up. they continue to skyrocket while your numbers go down. So what happens is those numbers of your bees, they'll go down significantly. And then that's whenever your colony will most likely get very small. And they come out of winter, you think you're okay, but maybe you get too late. It's too late at that point. Those bees, you most likely go out to your bee yard, your apiary, and most likely find them dead. Most likely, because whenever those bees get small, especially from mites, if you didn't treat them back in fall, right before winter, then like I said, those mite numbers will get way too high for comfort, and then there's nothing you can really do. So that's one big lesson you can learn. I've learned it. Just make sure you treat your mites, keep your bees strong, and you won't have that problem. Alright, there are two questions revolving around this topic, so I'll start out with the first one from Tom and Melissa. Thank y'all for watching the YouTube channel. And they ask, Grayson, do you use oxalic acid vapor in your colonies when they are broodless to treat for varroa mites? And to answer your question, I have not treated with oxalic acid vaporization. I have thought about it, and I haven't got around to ordering one of those vapors or just some of the other methods that you can use to treat with oxalic acid. And I've researched it. Don't worry. I like to research things and kind of see how things work, on YouTube or whatever, on Safari, those type of things, researching about it. I've done that. I just haven't got around to ordering some of those things, and I haven't used it. But one thing I will say that I've talked about, especially with the, having to keep your colonies broodless for this oxalic acid vapor, is down here in Alabama, we usually don't go broodless. And that's one of the main key problems that can really be a problem, is our bees really don't go broodless. So we can't really get a impactful vaporization treatment down here because most likely our hives still have brood in them. Because I checked one of my colonies recently, you guys saw me as well. Didn't have a lot of brood, but there's still brood in there, and signs that they're getting ready to brood up even more. A very small patch of brood. Most likely the other colonies have brood in as well. So to basically answer your question, I do not. Most likely I could, if I could find a perfect time where it's really, really cold and they're not brooding. I'm sure I can find times where they won't be brooding, but most of the year down here in Alabama, they're brooding, and it is hard to get a impactful treatment with that brood in the colony down here in South Alabama. Okay, the next question is from Cat2641, and he asks, what is the lowest temperature outside that you feel is safe to do a mite treatment of oxalic acid? So, like I said, I just answered a question about oxalic acid, so kind of guys know kind of about that, but he's asking, what's the temperature outside? Like, what's the safest temperature to do a mite treatment? And like I said, I don't have oxalic acid. I've researched it, but that's a really interesting question, and I did some research the last couple of days, kind of figuring it out, and what beekeepers and the best recommendation for your question for specific answers is 3 degrees Celsius, which is 37 degrees Fahrenheit, as this is the minimal temperature needed for proper sublimation of the oxalic acid vapor during treatment. Temperatures below this could result in an infective, a not so good mite treatment. So, to answer your question, 3 degrees Celsius, 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright, the next question is from Mike Buckbee, South Carolina, and he asks, in southern climate from South Carolina down in South Carolina, do queens lay all year or just when pollen or nectar flows are going? And that's a very, very good question. So down here, and I'm going to talk about my experiences, since me and Michael's most likely in the same type of climate. Even though he's in South Carolina, I'm sure it's a little different up in his area, but we still have some very similar. It's still similar. So down here, my bees usually brood all year long. Queens usually lay all year long. Now, sometimes once in a while during winter, they'll kind of remain broodless. Not because I don't really go into the colony so much all the time, so I really can't say exactly what my bees do. But I do know one of my colonies did have a little brood, so I suspect that the queen is laying. I saw some eggs. I saw the queen just moving around, brood. I'm gonna check some of the other colonies as well to see kind of what they're doing as well, because I'm kind of curious to see as well. But I'm thinking that my bees, in what I've seen in the past, not just these bees, but in the past, my bees usually brood all year long. Like even when there's not nectar flows or pollen around. But here's the thing, though. Here's the catch. The brood patterns won't be as big. It'll be small patches of brood. It might be one frame of brood and that's it. It's not a lot of brood. It's not like you're in spring, fall. It's nothing like that. It's just a very small brood pattern, very, very small egg pattern, larva. Not a lot. Just a little bit. But to answer your question, for me, and it depends on climates, depends on where you live. Down here in Alabama, and I'm sure maybe in your location as well, it might be somewhat similar. My bees usually, my queens usually lay all year round, but just in winter it's not as long, not as big patterns. But during spring and fall, there's much more brood and much more bigger patterns. All right, this is the last question. It is from Wildlife Adventures with Vincent. That's my brother, and he asks, I saw a question on your previous live stream like this. The question was, where do you see yourself and your beekeeping journey in 5 years? Where do you hope to be in your beekeeping career in 10 years? So, where do I see myself being in 5 years? Hopefully a sideline beekeeper, maybe a sideliner. I kind of want to make this a sideline business here in the next 5 years. Maybe if we'll see how everything goes this year, next year. I'm gonna take it 1 year at a time. And where do you hope to be in the next 10 years? Like I said, same thing. Maybe a sideliner beekeeper. Maybe sell some nukes, queen rearing, some of those things is kind of where I'd like to be in 10 years. But I'm going to take 1 year at a time and kind of see where each year ends up, kind of how everything goes. So that's kind of my plan. I have a video talking about that for next year. If you're curious what the plans are for next year, make sure to check the video out. I'll leave it in the description below. So let's go on and end off the video. Thank y'all for watching. Go on and click the thumbs up button. I'd really appreciate it. It would really help me out a lot if y'all go on and click the thumbs up button. Make sure to subscribe if you're new. And we will catch you guys on the next beekeeping video. Take care, everyone.